Boa tarde. Estamos aquecendo os aqui para começar. Só preciso fazer uma checagem de som. Ok, acho que está tudo funcionando aqui. Hi. Deixa eu apresentar nosso convidado de hoje. Nós vamos falar com o Sebastian, né? Primeiro, bem-vindos ao Quartos Clube, o nosso canal aqui de novidades. Temos o orgulho e a honra de receber o Sebastian Daschner, ele é Java Champion, consultor, promove treinamentos, né? Ele criou o livro, ele é autor do livro Architecting Modern Java 8 Applications e cria muito conteúdo para o Quartos. Já foi Java Advocate, Java Developer Advocate na IBM. Hi, Sebastian.
Hello there. Good day, good evening, wherever you are. Hello. And yeah, thank you for this introduction. I understood only a little bit, but it sounded correct.
I'll go. I'm going to say in English so you can share with us this joy of presenting you. Sebastian Daschner is a Java champion, consultant, and trainer focused on the enterprise Java and cloud-native development, author of Architecting Modern Java EE Applications. He creates courses and content on Quarkus and developer effectiveness, and previously served as a Java developer advocate in IBM. Oh, is this correct?
That's all correct, yes.
Okay.
Sounds good. No, thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm very happy to join the Quarkus Club today. I do a lot of Quarkus development, so that's a very good fit. Although today the topic won't be as much on Quarkus, but I think it's a fun topic anyway, and hopefully helpful for people.
I think today you're going to talk about CLI, right?
Correct, yes.
CLI tools.
Not to be more productive in the command line.
O Sebastian vai falar sobre ferramentas de CLI, né, de Command Line Interface. Eu acho que é uma feature super legal que a gente tem no Quarkus, né, em termos de desenvolver projetos. É um tipo de projeto que ele cria, né? Então acho que vai ser bem interessante aqui. Espero que todos vocês apreciem. Okay, go ahead, Sebastian.
Okay, thank you very much,
I will
Louis.
remove myself, but I'm still here. Okay, if you need anything, just call me.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah. So hello and welcome from my side as well about the session on productive command line usage. So this is, I think, a very helpful topic because a lot of developers don't know that much or wouldn't maybe call themselves as a command line enthusiast, although they definitely should be. And 1 second, I'm about to share my screen because we're going to do a lot of command line, not coding, but command line stuff today in this session. And it's definitely helpful as a developer. So what I want to do, I definitely want to focus on things that are helpful for Java developers, but in general for any developers, because the command line is a really helpful thing. So you should be able to now see my black command line window here. So that's where we're going to spend a lot of time. And what I'm going to show you is just a few things that will make you more productive as a developer, because the command line really is your friend. And I definitely can encourage to use the command line more as a Java developer. So this session should be very interactive as well. So please feel free to ask any questions. This is going to be live streamed. And for all of those of you watching this afterwards for the recording, that's also fine. I will try to provide as much extra content and pointers that can help you setting up these things. But for all of you who are joining us today, that's great. So please ask questions, make use of this interactive mode. So put them into the chat. If you're Not putting them in English, that's also fine. I'm pretty sure we can translate, but yes, trying to make this as interactive as possible. So yes, what to start with the command line. I'm trying to start this from a very basic experience. Like most Java developers don't do that much command line stuff. They probably know commands such as Java or maybe Maven or Gradle or something like this for their typical Java build tools. Maybe they use Git or maybe they use Docker, but that's probably it for most developers. And I want to show you what you can do with the command line for maximizing that usage, because there's much more things to do. Now I can see that we definitely see the screen to do on the command line. So what I did in the beginning was just an echo, like a hello world. This is the command line equivalent of doing a system out print line, and that just says hello world. So what to start with? What I have here is a Unix command line. So I have a Linux system that I'm using. So I personally use this called Arch Linux. I've been using this for many years. When I talk about command line, I mean a Unix compatible command line. So this can be, if you're using Mac OS on that system. It even can be on Windows. There's a possibility to use a proper command line on Windows nowadays. For example, the Windows subsystem for Linux. I would not recommend to use any DOS type of shell because of many reasons. So I usually talk about the Unix command line. I use Linux here directly, which is great for a lot of things. For example, when it comes to containers, but the command line that I'm using is this, what is called Z shell or Z shell. I'm not using Bash. This is also a very famous or very well used command line. There's a few reasons for that. We can get into the details. But yeah, that's what I'm using here. Z shell, for those of you who know, with the Oh My Z shell extension. So that's what I'm using. But I will provide you a lot of pointers how to get a setup like this. So what you have here is, for me, very basic. I have a setup that just shows in which directory I'm currently in. So that prints the current working directory. You're typically located in one directory here, and then all the commands that you type on your command line, for example, please print out the current contents that give me the files and directories of where I'm currently located. So I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that. So if I say, please build, for example, with Maven package, my current Java project, then obviously you're going to invoke this build there. Okay, so the basic things first, which for me is for navigation. How do we navigate in the command line? Well, typically you know about this command that is called cd for change directory. And a lot of people would do this, for example, cd ... cd ... stands for the parent directory, dot stands for the current directory. So if I say cd change into the directory, like go one up in the directory chain until in the Unix world you arrive at /, that is the root directory for the root of your file system. And then you go there. And for example, if I want to go back, cd temp, cd test, and things like that, this is not very convenient. Don't do this. What you can do with command line navigation, you should really navigate as quickly as you do in your IDE. What you do in your IDE, you do a fuzzy search, you can jump quickly, you have auto-completion, things like that. So for example, what I would do, which comes out of the box with C shell, you can jump to directories without typing cd. So this is really helpful if I say ... and then I go up. Or if I say, if I'm somewhere else, for example, go to temp test, and then I'm there. So I don't have to type cd. It sounds like a small improvement, but trust me, this is really helpful. Then I can just jump directly. And the other thing that I can do, I can also jump with expanding multiple hierarchies at once in Z shell. This is really helpful. So what you just saw, if I say I type TM for temp and then I press tab, then it auto-completes to temp, right? Test TE, tab, it auto-completes. That's really helpful. But for example, if I have a bigger chain, for example, I would like to go to my project. I have a project here that is my blog application that is under what is called workspaces. So if I go to workspaces, my name, ASCII blog, and then I would like to go to source main Java, for some reason, right? So I could do this, or what is even faster, I say I can do something like a fuzzy search. I just type one character here, and if the result is unique, then it can auto expand over all of these hierarchies at once. What do I mean by that? I can say workspaces is Daschner, ASCII block, source main Java, and I hit tab once, and then I press enter, and then I'm there. So this is a much faster way of jumping there. Then also we will later go, I don't want to go too much into that right now, into the what is called alias. So I can also have some shorter and faster way of typing here, a little bit what you can do with your IDE, but let's do this a little bit later. Let's go back to our directory. For example, you can also have a few shortcuts here like this, where you say you have a directory jump mark. This comes actually out of the box with your shell. It knows the last directories that you visited, basically. And if I now say cd go to, let's say, this one, go to the last one, then I can jump there. Or now go to this one, I say cd -2, and then I'm back there. So in my history. So if I want to go there, then I say this, and then I go back. Okay, cool. So what I want to point out, these are just a few examples of a faster navigation. You don't have to learn my tips here by heart, although I will point you to a lot of helpful examples, but I'm just offering some alternatives. Like, please don't get stuck on this CD, something that's really not that quick if there are faster ways to navigate and jump around in the directory structure. So this is really something you should look into to just be able to move around in the command line faster, because then you get to the point where it's really convenient to work in the command line, right? Like when you can say maybe you have multiple command line windows open with your most important directories in the project that you're working on, and then you can jump around and move to files and do everything that you need to do. So this is really, really cool. Okay, but one thing that is also really helpful, let's go to a Java project here. I typically, as a Java developer, I use commands something like, Maven package, right? Or maybe you say, I want to do Maven clean package, right? Or maybe I want to do Maven clean install if you're that person, right? Like if you want to do this. So these are commands that we type all the time. And now if I would type Maven clean package all the time, this is quite an effort. So of course, while coding in your IDE, you probably wouldn't do that. You would set up something like what is called a live template or some sort of shortcut. And in the command line, you can do this as well. These are called aliases. I can set up an alias where instead of Maven clean package, I say, please type this faster, Maven clean package. And there you go. So I typed, in my case, I defined this. In my case, I say MCP, Maven clean package, or maybe just Maven package, or maybe Maven clean package and skip the tests, right? So this is something that we do all the time, or very often. Well, we shouldn't do, but if you need that command, then it's helpful to not type this yourself all the time. Maybe you do something like Maven clean install. You get the point. So all these commands that we type all the time, you can really make your life easier by defining an alias for that. I will point to a lot of examples there. I will share, of course, this with you later. So this is my dot files it's on GitHub, where there are a lot of aliases defined for all sorts of stuff. So you can check them out yourself for saying, okay, what is available here. So just for you as some inspiration, this was Maven. Of course, Maven we use probably very often as Java developers. If you're a Gradle person, same story. Even for Java, if I say, well, Java itself, right? Like I sometimes invoke this on the command line. So for me, J just expands to Java. Actually, how this is expanded, that this is really printed into the buffer. Usually, if you just define them, then it's not expanded. Then it would literally just stay like that, like a J or MCP. There is a way to expand them. I provide them in a dot file. So you can check this out for Z shell, for example. So Java is as well. Or for example, JJ Java-jar. Like in Quarkus, we need this, right? Like if I have my Quarkus application and then I go to, did I actually build this? Let's try to build it. I'm not quite sure if it builds right now. but haven't done this for a long time. Then we could run this here. Okay. You know what? Now I'm going to use the skip tests because that's just faster. It's not about this project, but I want this to be built real quick. And now I can say, for example, target Quarkus. If I have this actually, oh no, that's the old one. Okay, interesting. It's a very old runner. So like that, and then I can have this alias to run that, right? So that's the typical Java commands. I can have a Java C. If sometimes I do this for some tests, typically we use the command line, but you get the point. All the commands that you type on the command line, you can then invoke here faster with an alias. Okay, what is another example? Another example is, for example, Docker, right? If you use Docker, then you have these commands. And if you use it on a command line, of course, there are other things like Docker Desktop or Toolbox or whatnot. But if you use it on a command line, then you typically have something like Docker PS all the time, right? And for this, I just define an alias because that's much faster. I have Docker PS, I have Docker Run, I have Docker Run with port 8080 because I need this quite often for just some tests on for Quarkus applications, obviously, and things like that, right? Like you can have Docker build, Docker push, and all your typical Docker stuff that you do. So again, for all these commands that you type very often, just define some aliases. You can do whatever you want with aliases. What I typically do, I try to find a single letter that then I do some mnemonic aliases with. So for example, D for Docker, and then I say D or DK, actually DK, and then P for PS, DKT for Docker stop, Docker run, and things like that. So this is just then easier for me to remember, but of course you can define whatever you want. Okay, another example is Git. Git is kind of interesting because Git itself has the ability to define aliases after this Git command. So you can have Git and then something like CM, or I don't know the defaults there because I never used them, for commit. Yeah, that's not bad, but actually what is much cooler to have the full thing as an alias. So it's even shorter if I say GST for Git status, or Git commit like this, or Git commit with a message, right? Or Git push, or Git pull with some rebase, right? Things like that. So things what we need all the time. There's another cool thing, Git graph, which is another subcommand that I defined for just having a ASCII graph, or not an ASCII art graph structure. So it's just much faster to type these commands. So that's really fun, and I think makes a lot of sense for command line aliases. Okay, so that's that. Again, you can do whatever examples, what you use. So these are just the most common tools. If there's another command line tool that you use, it might be even an internal tool, it might be a company internal tool, or one that you created. It doesn't matter. You can still define aliases for that. Like, for example, here you see a lot of examples in my dot files. Kube control for Kubernetes is another example. If you use Kubernetes, you know, how many times do you type kube control get pods? All the time, right? So please define an alias for that much faster. So these are examples, then the typical Unix ones, and so on and so forth. There's a thing called global aliases, which is kind of funny. Usually, aliases only expand at the beginning. So if I type here maven clean package, that's one thing. But if I say echo and then MCP doesn't expand because it's not the beginning. That's usually makes sense because certain things that just only make sense in the beginning. Sometimes that's not the case. So if I say, for example, I would like to go back to that directory, and I say, I think I have a JSON file here, file JSON, and then I say I would like to, this actually doesn't make sense. Let me expand this for some multiple lines. Otherwise, doesn't make sense what I'm about to show. If I say, please cat the file, and then cat displays the current contents. Cat stands for concatenate. So this just displays the file here. And if I then say, please do a grep search on, for example, message, and then it will display this, right? Okay, cool. So grep message. So that's that. This can be done faster as well with a global alias, I can say uppercase G already defines the pipe and grep, or G for -I for insensitive search, case insensitive, and things like that. So just what you usually would use. For example, less if there's a big file and then you want to pipe it into that. I want to pipe it into my editor. I use Vim. I will go into Vim in a second. Then this is also kind of helpful. So these are also interesting aliases. On my examples here, you find a few more examples that you can use. So what I use with Quarkus, for example, a lot or with any enterprise application, when I access testing APIs, if I have an HTTP API, then of course I use curl on the command line. So I have aliases for curl localhost, right? For curl localhost 8080, right? Because that makes sense. If I need to post something, then I have a global alias for that. So for example, curl post JSON, that then says, okay, post to that content type JSON, and now say hello world, right? There's nothing running there, but you get the point. Then I can quickly form that command and just post it there. So that's quite quick. I know a lot of people are fans of HTTP Pi, I think the name is. That's a command line. I don't have it installed here, but command line commands that is just a little bit less verbose, so you can invoke these HTTP calls faster. But to be honest, I know the structure of curl. I use it all the time. So for me, I define some aliases, and then I am very quick at invoking these APIs. So I think that's kind of cool. But you can take away here from whatever you would like. So here you see a few things. Okay, let's have a quick look into the chat. Seashell rocks. Team Bash here. Yeah. That's fine. Hello from Sao Paulo. That's very cool. Yes, so feel free to say hi. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat. Really happy to hear from you. Otherwise, I'll just continue with some shell content. So one more thing about these, what I called aliases, is that's special for Z shell, are suffix aliases. So this is kind of funny when you invoke like a file name, when you just type a name that ends with dot something, basically an end, then it is expanded or actually prefixed with something that you can define. Sounds a little bit weird. What do I mean by that? Well, basically you can do something like an open command when you say, I want to open a file with some program, which is really funny if you want to use the command line like a file explorer. If I now say I have a picture, that's a picture of the book I wrote, I can just tell that name, enter, and then it will open this in an application. That's like typing, I think Mac has the command open, and then the file name. And I can just type the file name here. And as you saw, it will also expand the file name and then do a background of whatever, your viewing program or your editing program. I have this for Excel files and things like that. So it will open LibreOffice and things like that, or even HTML files in the browser. You can play videos and music files by just opening these file players, or define some other commands. If I say I have a zip file, so for example, I define a zip file here by saying, please, this one thing should be in the zip file, and then I do this with that. This is basically the same thing like having my unzip command for listing the contents of that file. So I can just say, okay, please type the file as if you would open the file, and it can display it directly in the command line as well. So this is kind of cool to work with files. All right, I actually use the command line all the time instead of a file explorer. So believe it or not, but I don't use a file explorer anymore. I use my command line for that. And as in the course of this session, I will share with you some more tips how you can get there. But this is one, for example, to just be able to view and open a file with any arbitrary program just from the command line here. All right, so that's that. This is about aliases. Okay, to sum it up again, aliases are just helpful in the command line to be able to type stuff faster. like in various ways, right? Like instead of memorizing and typing a very long and complex command, I can just say, okay, do this faster. And for the very basic things, we should define these aliases for commands or command combinations with arguments that we keep typing all the time. Okay, so if you don't know where to start, have a look into your C shell or bash history file, and you see the history of all the commands you typed. You can even do, on my website, I have a command how to do some grep search, and it does some statistics, like what are the commands that you typed the most often, and then start with them to define some aliases for them, right? So that's really helpful. And there you go. Okay, so this is really cool. Another thing that is helpful on the command line for, well, basically executing things that we do even more often than certain commands are what would be called shell shortcuts. What is a shortcut? That is typically something like control plus something. Like, for example, control plus C, right? What is control plus control C? Well, it terminates the current command, right? It cancels it, sort of. It sends a term signal if there's something running. So if I say sleep command, sleep for 10 seconds, and then I press control C, then it's gone and I can continue. Or if I type something here, press control C, it clears the buffer, right? So this is built into the shell. Another thing that you might know, that is the clear command. A clear command just clears the command line window. And there's another shortcut for that is Control L. And Control L also clears this. Oh, 1 second. Let me, oh, shit, this is not installed. Okay, forget about that. I wanted to have a display overview of my keyboard, but now you have to believe me what I'm typing, so you cannot see what I'm typing. But this was Control L, like Lima, for clearing this window. Okay, there are a few other shortcuts that are defined by your shell. It depends which way of typing you're using. We get into a little bit of that later. But now again, in the same spirit as for aliases, don't stop with what is defined in your shell, but define your own shortcuts. So what do I mean by that? You can define your own shell shortcuts by just defining some shell functions. And again, I have some examples in my dot files how to do this. A few examples that I want to give you is what I otherwise would type all the time, or what we are probably typing, is some sort of ls, right? Like typically you type ls to list the current files and directories here, or ls this one, or some other way, you know. I actually use this exa replacement. This is another program that you can download and modify this basically in replacement for ls with some nicer colors and whatnot. It's more modifiable. Doesn't matter. We use some things like that all the time in a command line because we need to know, okay, what's the current content here, right? So for that, it really makes sense to define a shortcut. Why? Because we type this all the time, right? Like L or ls, or if you have some alias or ll, you know, whatever. And it's just faster. So instead of L, I defined Control K. Why K? Well, because it's right next to L on the keyboard, and it does a clear and displays the current contents. So I can just with one keystroke display this here, which is really helpful because then, you know, I can navigate and see this faster, right? In the same way, like for what I said earlier with the navigation, if I say I'm here in this directory, now I wouldn't want to go to temp test. I press enter, I press Control K, and then I see, okay, that's in this directory. Okay, interesting. In the same way, here there's a subdirectory. I can also display then in a hierarchical way the contents, including subdirectories. For that, there is a command called tree. You have to install that typically, but it shows you the whole tree of directory onwards from the current directory. So this can be really big for, you know, a big Java project, for example. If I say tree here, then, you know, this is really big with all of the contents and target and source and whatnot. But you can also say Control K. I can define shorter versions, for example, Control J, which is again next to it, that then displays the tree with 1 level, or H with 2 levels, things like that. Now it's already getting big, but you see, is this really helpful for navigating? I say, okay, here that's the current list of files and directories. Control J, okay, then that's the next level, source main, source test, things like that. And with this, you can just navigate actually even faster than what you could do in a file explorer. So this is really helpful. If I say, oh, okay, there's this directory, source main, I jump there, and then I see, okay, Java, what else do I have, and things like that. So you can move your way around, and that's just pretty cool. So you can define these own shortcuts. Have some examples here for 1 second. I have to actually see where this is, if that's in these examples or in my Z shell. Yeah, that's here under autocomplete for the aliases, and then the shortcuts. Clear tree level 2, level 3, things like that. And you can do this. Same for Git. Why? Because if you're using Git, you use Git status all the time, right? And you can have an alias, GST or something, that's fine. But I use it so often that for me, Control G actually does this. It clears and it displays a Git status. So if I create a file here, if I say Control G and it says, okay, this is untracked, and now I have a change to be committed here, Control G for Git status. That's just, for me, that's even faster because I use this all the time. So again, that's up to you. If you see that you type commands like literally hundreds of times per day, then it might be a candidate for that. Other funny things is, for example, I have Control T that displays the current date in ISO format. So why do I need that? For example, as I told you already, I use the command line pretty much like a file explorer. So when I'm managing some files and documents, like PDF documents, I say, for example, rename that book cover to, let's say, the current date dash book cover. Then I do this globbing here with the curly braces. What does this do? That's a little bit weird in the beginning. And then I say, okay, just remove this to the current date. And then I have this for that file, for example. So it sounds funny, but actually I use this all the time. So if I say, for example, I want to rename this file as well, that's typically how I handle my documents, because then you can sort them quite easily via date. For example, if you have backup files, you can do the same thing with a Unix timestamp, for example. For me, that's Control-Alt-T for a timestamp. So that's that. Similar story. Here you can see how to set this up with Z shell, for example, on my dot files. But again, it's not that you should use my examples. It should make you think what is possible and then define your own aliases and shortcuts here to use the command line a little bit more effective. All right. If you have any questions on that, please feel free to put them into the chat. But I think with this, that gives us already a lot of possibilities on the command line, because then we're really able to navigate quickly and we're able to type fast, the typical commands that we have, jumping around, things like that. All right, but speaking of drinking coffee, so what I typically want to do as a developer, I want to do stuff and then instruct the computer to automate things while I can sit back and drink my coffee, right? And typically for a Java project, this means, automating some processes. For example, if you have a complex build, let's say you're not, if you're using Quarkus, it's quite simple because with Maven package, you can build your application and you're pretty much done. But maybe, let's say you also have some Docker builds or you have some tests that you need to invoke in a specific way, then some shell scripting might be helpful. So shell scripts are, of course, scripts that you can do on the command line that contain multiple commands. And they are very simple to do, actually. You can say, I want to have a script. I can call this whatever I want. Typically, it has a .sh or .z shell or .bash or any ending, typically .sh. It just has to be a script that is executable and contains my commands. Like typically, we also tell the command line which syntax it has, or rather which command it should be executed with here. But that's going into details. But let's say I have my Java application. I would like to have clean package. Now, aliases obviously don't work. I would like to build my application. And then let's say I want to run or Docker push or whatever, right? So that's that. What I have to do in my script, I just type in the commands that I would otherwise just type in my command line, one after another, and then it's executed one after another. That's it. Obviously, there is much more to that. A bash syntax has a very sophisticated language for saying I can test some things. I can have if-else control structures. It's a programming language, so I can do there whatever I want. But I really want to encourage you to look into shell scripting, even if it's just very simple. And, they help you a lot. Like, especially now with ChatGPT and all the other LLMs, they can help you a lot with shell syntax. And I use this all the time because I've written a lot of shell scripts, like a few hundreds in my career, and I never can remember the syntax or of an if. So I have something like completion here in my Vim, so because otherwise I couldn't remember the syntax. That's not the point. That's fine. You don't have to remember. And for shell scripting, it's okay if it's a little bit pragmatic, if it's not the nicest code style, as long as it works. It's really beneficial to have some automation there that just enables you to do the job faster. So here, for example, I say now I want to invoke these commands. I don't have a working Java project here, so I just say, please do an echo and then do a sleep in between, so it looks like we're doing something, right? And then I say, please, write that file, make it executable, and then I can execute it. Simple as that. And now I can lean back while it does the work. Great. And you can do this with all sorts of things. And this is really helpful because especially on a Linux system, you can automate anything that the computer can do with shell scripts, like literally anything. There's also an automation hooks into whatever, even into GUI applications, when you can say, oh, please move the mouse to this location now, insert a click, or emulate the keyboard or something like that. Of course, if a program offers a command line version, that's much easier. Or if it offers an API, like with curl, that then you can go into, that is really even better, because then you can automate anything. Okay, so now, would you like to share your dot files again? Yes. Right now I cannot paste something into the chats. This is basically this URL. GitHub is Daschner dot files, or you just Google for my name and dot files. I will share some commands, some URLs with you later where you can see them. But for now, this is there. So that's on GitHub. So now with shell scripting, just a few examples. Again, you can script whatever you want to do. Like what I do, for example, that goes more into the topic of productivity and time management, that I set up timers, a timer that then gives me a notification. If I say, for example, please notify me in 1 minute, then I have a timer command that then does a notification on the GUI, and after sleep command and things like that. You can do this. You can have some sort of cron jobs that ask for some status updates. If you say, I would like to, I don't know, I have a website where it shows me certain price of items that I'm interested in. You can have some sort of web crawler and invoke this once a day and send you a notification if something happens. I actually, at one point, I created a video that's on YouTube with how to create a Telegram bot for yourself, where you can actually do stuff and then send yourself a message that typically would run on a server, but you can also have this on your computer with a cron job running and doing some stuff in the background. And if at some point something happens, it could send you a message. So you can really automate anything. You just have to be creative. So a few examples from my life. Also in these dot files, you can have some examples in the bin directories. So this is kind of helpful there. For example, what I have, these Elgato, you don't see them, but I'm illuminated by 2 lights. And these Elgato lights, they're called key lights. They actually, they're in the Wi-Fi and they have an HTTP API. If I say, please turn them off, now you will see in the video, and now I'm dark. So it just turned off the light and now it turns the light back on again. Which again, that's just automation and makes it easier to do this on the command line rather than pulling out my phone and using this app that then connects to the Wi-Fi and, you know, finds them and whatnot. So you can automate stuff. Even this goes into the topic of home automation or whatever you want to have. As long as you can sort of program it, you can automate it on a command line. So that's, for example, that's a shell script. Well, I can show you it. It connects to the, I think it uses curl. Yes, exactly. So this has a host with some HTTP command where I do an HTTP put, and that's it. So really cool. Yes, so you can do all sorts of stuff. What is another good example? Oh, for Quarkus, yes. So that's kind of interesting. For Quarkus, to create a new project, I actually never used the Quarkus CLI. Now, this might surprise you. I know, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of fans of the CLI there. I'm not even using Maven archetypes. If I have a project, like a test project that I now want to, let's do this really quick because you're the Quarkus club. I want to create, let's say I have a new test project. So I have the script that is called Maven Quarkus. And what it does, it just creates a directory test project. And now it does a basic structure and my basic POM XML with the most important, I think it's probably a little bit outdated Quarkus version. Yeah. But it just created this. So now you might tell me why you're not using the Quarkus CLI, why you're not using Maven archetypes. Actually, because this does exactly what I want. It formats the POM XML exactly how I want it. And it takes like, 200 milliseconds or something like this. So it's super fast. It does exactly what I want. And for me, it just works. And I do a lot of projects like this, for proof of concepts, for trying out stuff, for reproducers, for content. So this is really helpful. I can go there now. I can open it up in my IntelliJ. Oh, by the way, you saw another script to start up IntelliJ. And then just opens it there, right? So I have the typical structure. I go to source, that's already having my my name and all of this there. So that's just quick. Just as an example. Again, there are many, many other options available. If you use the Quarkus command line, then, if that works for you, that's fine. But just as an example, stuff that you do all the time can be really automated really well with shell scripts. So that's that. You can be really creative. Then, if you need to use ChatGPT to ask you how to do certain things with the syntax and whatnot, and just try it out. So that's really cool. And as I said, I wrote a lot of scripts over the last years, and they just really help me. Okay, cool. So that's that. Shell scripts are really helpful. They are your friend. Now, let's go into a little bit more sophisticated command structures. So this should not be a masterclass on command line usage, but just a few things that are really helpful. A few are already showed. So for example, let's say you have something like, I think the name is globbing, like with these curly braces or with a wildcard. So for example, what I had, let's say I want to rename something, test. I want to rename this JSON file JSON to, let's say, JSON file, right? Then I say JSON file. So this is just the structure of inserting multiple times with certain content. So for example, if I say A, B, then it will just produce A file, B file, right? Here, obviously, this doesn't work because that file doesn't exist, but you get the point. You can actually expand these with tab, right? This is also really cool. If I say move, file.json. Now you see that I go back, nothing, comma, like an empty string, and comma, and then, for example, this date what I had, dash, and then this, you can invoke this command, but you can also in Z shell expand it already with tab, and then you see what this produces. And now you see that I just moved or renamed the JSON file like this. Okay, so these braces are really helpful. Same, of course, is true for the wildcard. If I say remove everything here, like remove wildcard, I can also expand this here with tab. You see that it removes all of these things. So sometimes I do this, I expand it, and then I, remove a few files if I say, oh, only do this on a few, things like that. So this can be really helpful. Now I don't want to remove them, but you get the point. So with what is called globbing, you can do very interesting things here. Okay, another thing that composes commands is this vertical bar that is called a pipe. This is, on a US keyboard layout on the top right over your enter bar, if you have shift and press this. This is used to pipe the result of a previous command to the next command with standard in. So if I say, for example, what we had earlier with the file JSON, I can cat this command, so I can just display it here, or I can say grab and now search for a message, and then it will, sort of reduce this. So grab takes the whole input that came from the previous command and then searches on that. Of course, with grab, I can also directly say go to the file JSON and search for message. Yes, that's the same outcome, but you get the idea. With this pipe, I can do this even if there is no file. Like, for example, I go to curl localhost 8080, and then I say the result, please grab for a message. Now I have nothing running there, but imagine there is this JSON output. Then you can compose this, for example. So this is really cool. Especially it's helpful if you're using, I do this all the time with, for example, the curl when I invoke an API, and then another nice command that is called JQ that works on JSON. I think the name stands for JSON query, that works on JSON structures, and then you can query them. For example, you can pretty print them, you can sub-select with certain things. For example, if I say file JSON and then JQ, it says, okay, now it pretty prints it. And then I say JQ.message, only give me the message, for example, and then give me the message, let's say without the quotes, hello world. Very cool. Then I say, please, only print the first one and whatnot, or search for hello and, all of the stuff, or base 64 encoded. Okay. And then just for the fun of it, base 64 decoded, and you get the point. So you can pipe these commands further into what you would like to do. And then, of course, if you do this with a shell script by accessing some API and using the data further, this can be really helpful. Okay, so that's that. Another thing that can be really helpful is what is called sub shells. So a shell command within another shell command. This can be helpful if you say, for example, I would like to stop all Docker containers. So I have an alias for that. It says Docker stop. And then for Docker stop, you need to name the containers that you would like to stop. And for them, you have a sub command. So this command actually gives us all the containers, but only the container names or the container IDs. So it lists them one after another. If I say, for example, remove and then give me all the files, this might be something like that. And then I could, with tab, I can expand them. I don't have to, but just for us to see, then you see this is what it does. Or for example, please echo whatever I have. So echo the current Docker PS. So this doesn't really make sense because it's the same, what I would have, but you get the point. So you can have a sub command, for example. So this can be really helpful for all sorts of stuff. If I say, display some other result of another command, it can be another script. So sometimes you need this if you want to expand certain things. So this is just helpful there as well with subshells. Okay, cool. In the chat, yeah, yes, JQ is super useful with K8S admin. That's right. With any API, it's actually super helpful with JQ. So that's really cool for working on these things. All right. So if you have any other questions on these so far. So we have
Sebastian, let me ask you something. Sometimes you work in an environment like you don't have only the Windows environment because it's too restrict and you don't have access to Unix shells, something like that. Do you know any? I know Git Bash, but I don't know what you think about it. If you can use it to simulate some of this.
Yeah. So I know what you mean. Basically what to do in a Windows environment and how to get like a good experience there. I use Git Bash a lot. At first, I think it used the Cygwin and then it was Baboon Shell or something like this, like with the shell emulation. There were some, so I still have one or two clients where I'm forced to sort of do this in a Windows environment. And I use this because it was the best like compromise, I would say, because then you actually can also define shell scripts and you can run them. So this is at least, doable. Sometimes you have issues, especially with the performance, because I was told, I don't know for sure, but I was told that because the process model in these operating systems work differently, so then sometimes it can take a long time when you usually, you fire a command, you press enter, and the result is there. And then in this Windows emulation, it might take a while. And then if you have, a longer shell script, it would just take forever. But if you go to take a coffee, then it's okay. But this might be an issue. What I've seen is that the Windows subsystem for Linux works the best. But also I have to admit, I luckily don't have to work that much with Windows. So this is what I would look into that. So if some of you have to do this, I would look into what is the state of the art. So the things I tried back then, but they're older, is Git Bash, back then with Cygwin, then the Baboon Shell, and WSL. Maybe there are other better emulators out there. It would, of course, be helpful to have an emulator that works on your file system directly. A different thing is to have something like a virtual box or a VM. But obviously, unless you have some sort of way to mount the volume inside, that then this is also a little bit tricky. That might work, that you say you have an environment like that where you have something like a shared folder where I can pipe this into the VM and then work on this. It depends a little bit. I would say it depends more on the setup and environment that you have to work with, which options you have, with regards to installation and these permissions and things like that. I would try out different things. But if you can, I would try to be in a Unix compatible shell, if it's Bash or Z shell, something. That's what I would do.
Okay. That's great. I apologize because I think I did a wrong introduction because I thought you were talking about Quarkus CLI. I'm sorry about that, but it was as interesting as would be with Quarkus CLI. It was a great topic to cover. Thank you.
I hope so. Yes, perfect. So I have one more topic about Vim or VI, which I think might be helpful if people are interested in that, because I do this on the command line also quite a bit. So that's the last thing I have to share. If we have a little bit of time for that.
Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So that's that. Maybe you have seen that I use VI or Vim as an editor quite a lot on the command line. And the reason for that really is, for me, Vim. So I use the editor a lot, not necessarily because I'm a big fan of the program of Vim, but much more I'm a big fan of the Vim way of typing. So this is kind of interesting. And maybe you also saw that in the command line, I do this with, basically a Vim setup. So I have the VI mode active in my Z shell, so I can go here and jump around and change stuff, for example, like this, which is really helpful if I'm editing commands. And again, I can press escape and then with JK go up and down and do this faster than if I would need to use the cursor arrows on your keyboard. So why is this faster? Well, because you don't have to move your hands around, right? Like you're not breaking this flow of typing when you say, now I'm typing a command and now I have to look down and see, okay, where is my cursor arrow to go up, 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 or something like this. You can just do it while staying basically, in that same flow while your hands are staying on the same position. And this is the interesting thing with Vim that we say, or the confusing thing with Vim, if you start up the program, you cannot type. Well, unless you, per accident, press the correct key for saying, for example, I for insert, and then I can type. And this is the confusing thing, because usually you're in the what is called normal mode. And then with, well, not WASD like in a computer game, but with H, J, K, and L, you can move around the cursors pretty much like a computer game. And this is how I would like to think about it. You would use it more like you would use a computer game on a computer, right? Like if you, like on a first person view in a computer game on your computer, you wouldn't, use the cursor arrows and look down, oh, where I have to, because then you lose the game. You have to be in the flow. You look at your screen and you use the mouse and maybe the left hand with WASD to move around, right? And then why is it WASD and not the cursor arrows? Well, with WASD, you have F and E and R right next to it. You don't have to look down. You can just type it, you can just press it from your fingers with the finger movements. And here it's very similar. I can just type, and without breaking this, hand movement, without making this hand dance on my keyboard, I can just stay in the same position, press one character, and then I'm in a different mode. Now I can move around. For example, W for word forward, B for word backwards. I can say, please copy and paste this now, and then, go up, down, left, right, and things like that. If I say I want to jump down here, then I say, for example, go 3 lines down, forward, and then I'm there, and I can replace this word, for example. So things like that, I can just move around quicker. And I know there's some sort of learning curve into that. It takes you a few days and 1 or 2 weeks to really get into this. But once you're in that way of typing, you don't go back. It's really, you just get used to it. It goes like second nature, like in a computer game, right? Like when you move around in a computer world, you're not thinking, oh, now I press W for forward. No, you just move. It feels like natural. And for typing and for editing text, it should be the same. And this is why I'm a big fan of just a Vim way of typing. Doesn't matter if it's really the Vim editor. It can be any other editor that has a VI emulation. I use IntelliJ with the Idea Vim. That's the name with the plugin. So I have the, the whole power of the IDE together with this Vim movements. So I'm really fast there. But, I can also include it with the command line, because on the command line, I have the same ways. If I, press this and then I go back here, I can say, okay, please jump around here, jump forward to this pipe, replace it, and then, do something else, so, which is much faster than saying, okay, now I need to delete until I'm there, right? Like that's typically what we do. And this is just much faster for editing text. So that's...
Yeah, and I think it's good to learn Vim, because I think you're in almost any Linux system you're going to find it. You don't have to download it because it's already there.
Typically installed, at least VI. Yes, correct. And then you already know how to use it. Yes.
And if you think if you're about to take some certification exams, for example, like Kubernetes, I don't think you're going to lose time. You don't want to lose time in finding your preferred editor.
Yes, no, that's true. It's really helpful if you're a sysadmin that on pretty much all the systems it comes installed. That's another thing. Yeah, that's really cool. And now for the command line, there's also an interesting integration. Of course, this is now specific to Vim. There are many other editors who do a similar thing. So for example, if I go back to the JSON file, now this was pretty printed. Now let's unpretty print it. Let's say you have a very big JSON file. I then say, I want to select this. And now I can invoke commands. For example, here you see I'm typing JQ, and then it will print the result here. So now this is not that this is
cool.
not that sophisticated, but assuming you have a very big JSON.
Yeah.
Now I know this is not valid, but doesn't really matter. Where you say, okay, that is the output of my API, and it's just really, really long. And then I say, okay, please pretty print this JQ. And well, okay, that didn't work because JQ saw that it wasn't valid. Okay, let's do this again with a few. Let's say 10 times paste something. You see, that's really quick. Do this into a single line, and then you see that this is really not that visible. And now I can say, please pretty print this. And now, for example, do this, and things like that. Nice. Or I want to access a certain aspects here. I can already format it. Let's say I want to have the only the no, that was not valid. So you see, I need to learn more about the syntax. I think it was something.
And you have sometimes you have that JSON line files. Have you seen it? It's a JSON in which every line it's a JSON, a complete JSON structure.
Yes.
And you have a lot of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
so you can do
big files, and you have to search it.
Exactly. So this can be really helpful. And for example, if you say I want to invoke certain commands here, then this can be done as well. So on the Vim, I see this actually very similar because, for example, if I say please insert the date, then this is pretty much the same what I did on a command line. I can say date or Unix timestamp tab, and then it expands to whatever I insert as that's now an internal command that is now invoked by Vim, but very similar like on the command line with the shortcuts what I showed. It just invokes a command and displays the result. So what I'm saying is that if you're a little bit familiar with shell scripting and these command line commands, you can do a lot of really cool things in your operating system and in the tools, especially in the Unix world, right? Like when you say, hey, I'm in a Unix, environment, I can invoke certain commands here even in my custom tools or what I write. I think that's just pretty cool. You can do a lot of stuff on the command line. So that's that. This was just Vim.
As I work in the SRE here in BV Bank. And I can tell you that as an SRE, you have the automation discipline. I think it's a must-have knowledge to do some automations and reduce style. You have to know that tools.
You have to. That makes such a big difference because as an SRE, if you have to fight through tons of log files or then statistics until you find what you're searching for, if you once define the commands and filters that just finds it directly, or at least, you have some sort of knowledge base for yourself, like these are the grab commands, whatever that I need to invoke, this saves you, many, many hours of work. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's very important. So that's that. Very cool. So this was basically the things that I have to show. So I can now also have some more content. Let me actually paste this here on the screen. I think that makes sense. So these are my dot files. There is my blog that is here. I think this is the most helpful I have a lot of content on productivity in general, and then also command lines. So if you go on my blog and then have certain like hashtags I have. So for example, the hashtag command line or a hashtag productivity I have. If you go to the tags here, so on my blog, you go there, go to tags.
Right to the point.
And then you see a lot of stuff. Or of course, if you're interested in tags Quarkus, I have a lot of Quarkus content as well. So that URL gets you to my blog. You can search around there with the tags. That's kind of cool. And see a lot of stuff. Many of them are videos that you can check out. And of course, pretty much everything that I'm showing, the code is on GitHub. So all of that is shared. You can try all of that yourself, like these dot files, for example. Most of it is for Z shell here, but a lot of functionality. There is also an equivalent for Bash or for other things. But I hope this gives inspiration of what is possible with the command line. And then definitely all of you will find different tips, right? Like the point is never to copy, my commands or my aliases, what I'm doing there, although probably some might be helpful for a Java developer, but really to get this way of thinking, to say what is possible on the command line. I want to do the things that I'm already doing manually, just much faster. And then you will come up with your own solutions, with your own aliases, with your own shell scripts and things like that. So this is just, should help you there. So that's that.
That's great.
And yes, that's pretty much everything I have.
We're going to wrap up, I think. Sebastian, I'd like to thank you for being such a great presenter here in our channel. You are always welcome to come back and show the craft that you do so well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis. I really appreciate it. And for everybody attending and watching, thanks a lot for attending and for watching.
Obrigado, pessoal. Foi um prazer recebê-los aqui. Espero que tenham curtido. Compartilhem, assinem o canal e vamos, que a nossa comunidade aí está trazendo muito conteúdo legal. Espero que vocês continuem ligados na gente aí. Um abração. Thanks, Sebastian. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.